June 15, 1943. Dawn burns across the flat scrubland of Texas, a thin haze of dust rising where guards stamp their boots along the wire. At Camp Swift, the chain-link fences hum faintly with heat even at sunrise, and the prisoners stand in small clusters watching. Among them, Wehrmacht Lieutenant Karl-Heinz Stenger squints against the light. He has been transported thousands of miles from the ruins of North Africa, past the Atlantic swells and rail lines that seemed endless. He hears something unfamiliar, a sharp crack, not rifle fire, not artillery. It echoes across the compound, followed by a cheer. His first instinct is to duck. Instead, he sees a ball arcing into the sky, clearing the razor wire before dropping into the mitt of an American guard. Stenger mutters in disbelief, later recorded in his diary, "This is war and they play games." The visual is startling. In the same space built for confinement, where barbed wire coils glint like polished blades, men with rifles stand watching as other men swing wooden clubs at stitched leather. The sound carries, thunk of ball in glove, scrape of boots on gravel bases, the low rumble of voices cheering. The smell of boiled beans drifting from the mess hall collides with the scent of sweat and dry cedar dust. The geometry of captivity, fences, watchtowers, barracks roofs, frames the diamond where Americans throw and catch. To the POWs, it looks like a stage set from another planet, a rhythm of movements that resemble drill but have no bullets, only leather, ash wood, and chalk. Why does it matter? The numbers explain more than the image. By mid-1943, the U.S. Army Provost Marshal was already calculating a problem that could not be solved by barbed wire alone. Within 2 years, nearly 425,000 German prisoners would be held on American soil. Feeding one man required roughly 3 pounds of rations a day. Multiply that by hundreds of thousands, and the figure approaches 1.2 million pounds daily, loaded from depots to trucks to camp kitchens. Beyond food, there was order to consider. Guarding every restless prisoner with a rifle was manpower the Army did not have to spare. The calculation became simple. If each baseball game kept 200 men occupied, that meant fewer guards were needed and fewer fights broke out. Discipline could be measured not only in bullets but in innings. A camp was a machine, and every machine needed a lubricant. Baseball was cheap lubricant. The Geneva Convention of 1929 required humane treatment, but American officers quickly realized compliance could double as strategy. Idleness was dangerous. Idle men conspired, tested fences, staged escapes. Occupied men tired themselves out, fell asleep faster, and remembered that punishment for misconduct might cancel tomorrow's game. From Washington to Texas, the orders spread down the chain. Provide recreation, provide equipment, keep the prisoners moving. If the war effort was an assembly line of steel and fire, the camps became controlled factories of human behavior, and the crack of the bat was the piston keeping it running. Crates thump onto warehouse floors. In New York docks, Liberty ships unload side by side. Artillery shells, canned rations, uniforms, and, strangely, boxes stenciled with recreational equipment, YMCA shipment. Inside, padded gloves and bats rest alongside playing cards and chess sets. The U.S. Red Cross, the YMCA, and the War Department all share the same logic. Bored prisoners are a liability. Secret memos circulate in the Provost Marshal's office. Phrases like risk of disorder and potential for organized escape underline every page. Washington clerks stamp the orders and the pipeline moves. It is not improvisation. It is systematized like any other supply line. A Liberty ship that carries 7,000 tons of cargo can easily devote 1 ton to recreation. Bats weigh ounces, gloves a few pounds, a baseball no more than 5. For every 500 prisoners, regulations assign a recreation kit worth less than $50, but saving far more in manpower. Each kit, a dozen bats, a stack of gloves, 6 balls, chalk for lines. The cost is trivial compared to guard payroll. War factories churn out tanks, but in Louisville, the same machine tools cut ash wood into 34-inch cylinders. The Louisville Slugger line, running at 1,000 bats per day, diverted partly to the Army quartermaster. Chicago workshops stitch cowhide into gloves, the same leather used for bomber jackets. Nothing is wasted. At Camp Swift, the layout follows military geometry. 90-foot base paths are paced off with engineer precision. Chalk lines mark the field, drawn by German prisoners under guard supervision, their hands leaving white dust across khaki uniforms. The diamond doubles as drill ground when the bats are stored. Specifications matter. A standard bat weighs 33 ounces, balanced so the center of gravity rests 22 inches from the knob. A regulation field requires 90 feet between bases and 60 feet, 6 inches from pitcher's mound to home plate. The Army insists on regulation distances, believing consistency instills order. By late 1944, more than 700 camps across the country will report functioning athletic programs, each documented in the Provost Marshal's bulletins. The first game unfolds like an experiment. Sun beats down, the Texas soil cracked and hard beneath boots. Guards with rifles stand at the perimeter, their shadows falling across foul lines. An American sergeant squats behind the plate, glove raised. A pitcher winds up, motion crisp like a soldier throwing a grenade. The crack comes sharp and startling, the sound bouncing against barrack walls. German POWs flinch instinctively. For men who last heard sharp concussions in Tunisia and Sicily, the similarity is unnerving. Some laugh nervously, others scowl, arms folded. Karl-Heinz Stenger notes the reaction in his small notebook. The bat sounds like a Mauser at distance. But the men cheer instead of ducking. The guards remain stone-faced. Discipline is the frame. Even entertainment is watched like a drill. A foul ball skitters toward the fence, and a German prisoner picks it up uncertain. The guard nods once, allowing him to toss it back. A line has been crossed. The game continues. The ball loops high, almost lazily, before dropping into a glove with a hollow pop. Dust kicks up around bases as players sprint, shouts rising. POWs watch with mixed expressions. Confusion, envy, curiosity. One mutters under his breath, "They waste strength on this." Yet the tension eases. The crowd of prisoners no longer mills in restless silence. They focus, track the ball, argue about rules they don't yet understand. For the American command, this is proof of concept. The bat is not only wood and ash. It is control, delivered at the speed of a thrown pitch. At first, the Germans only watch. Then curiosity shifts into participation. Requests reach the camp commandant in careful handwriting. German language rule books, spare gloves, a chance to try. The U.S. officers hesitate, then approve. Within weeks, the fields are no longer just for American teams. German prisoners stitch uniforms from flour sacks, dyeing numbers onto the back with boot polish. They choose captains, form teams, and argue over strategy as though they are back in peacetime villages. The countermeasure works better than expected. Reports sent to Washington show measurable results. In camps with regular sports leagues, escape attempts drop by nearly 30% compared to those without. Baseball becomes a form of containment. A man preparing for a game thinks less about cutting through fence wire. A man exhausted after 9 innings thinks less about tunneling. The sport functions as psychological fencing, an invisible perimeter layered inside the barbed one. The guards see it too. When the fields are busy, the barracks stay quiet. A rifle may command obedience, but a game can drain away rebellion more efficiently. But every system strains under load. The leather cracks. Balls split seams. Gloves wear down to bare stitching. In 1 week, a single team can shred half its equipment, forcing improvisation. Prisoners carve makeshift bats from pine scraps scavenged near the workshops. Others trade hand-carved figurines or cigarette rations for an extra ball from a guard. At Camp Swift, August heat brings its own breaking point. Temperatures climb past 105 degrees. Prisoners collapse mid-inning, their bodies unaccustomed to Texas sun. Medics rush with canteens, and hydration plans are hastily formalized. 5 gallons of water per squad per hour, noted in the medical officer's log. Technical limitations are exposed. The program consumes more gear, more resources, and more oversight than predicted. The fragility of the system becomes visible in Kansas, at Camp Concordia, in late 1943. The day begins like any other. Chalk lines sharp, prisoners chanting, guards relaxed but watchful. A close play at second base sparks an argument. Voices rise, fists clench. Then one man swings his bat not at a ball but at another prisoner. Chaos erupts. Guards fire warning shots, boots pounding across the diamond. One German collapses from a head wound, blood staining the dust where only chalk had been moments before. The game dissolves into shouting, confusion, and fear. Reports later label it a disturbance, but eyewitness accounts describe it more directly, a riot contained only by rifles. The incident shakes the confidence of camp officers. What was designed as control now looks like a liability. Baseball, meant to pacify, has revealed its double edge. If it channels energy, it can also unleash it. The camp commander files a grim note. Athletics may incite as well as subdue. Oversight must be constant. The machine of order has slipped a gear, and for a moment the camp runs rough, steel teeth grinding instead of turning smoothly. The riot forces a rethink. Camp commanders convene, reports stack high, and memos pass along the chain of command. Baseball cannot be abandoned. It has proven too effective at containment, but it must be refined. Improvisation begins. Officers order the appointment of official referees, sometimes American guards, often German POW officers themselves, pressed into service as umpires. Games are now scheduled, monitored, and recorded like drills. The YMCA supplies additional equipment, even German-language translations of the rulebook. To dilute tension, soccer balls arrive too, satisfying prisoners who resist American games. At Ruston and Hereford, baseball diamonds are repainted as multi-purpose fields, doubling as parade grounds. The chalk wiped away in the morning for inspections and restored by afternoon for games. Every line serves two masters, order and recreation. POWs adapt as quickly as their captors. They form leagues, draw up schedules, and assign rankings. Uniforms evolve from flour sacks into carefully sewn jerseys, marked with improvised insignia. At some camps, guards allow local spectators to watch, turning the games into strange cultural exchanges. Farmers and their children peering through fences at men who had once fought in Rommel's army, now running bases under a scorching American sun. The Germans argue about rules with the same intensity they once reserved for tactics, bickering over infield flies instead of artillery placements. Baseball becomes ritual, each swing a strange rehearsal for a future they cannot yet imagine. The climax arrives in the summer of 1944. At Camp Ruston, Louisiana, the largest German camp in America, leagues have grown ambitious. A championship is arranged not only between prisoner teams, but between German and Italian POW squads transferred from other compounds. Word spreads quickly and hundreds of men gather around the field. Guards line the perimeter, rifles ready, but their faces betray curiosity. The game begins under blistering heat, dust clouds rising as players sprint the bases. Chants echo in German and Italian, colliding like rival battalions yet contained inside the fence. The atmosphere is electric, a paradox of freedom within confinement. Every crack of the bat draws cheers, every close call sparks argument. Guards' hands tighten on rifle stocks, but the tension holds, never breaking into violence. Overhead, the drone of a training aircraft passing above reminds them all that the war still rages beyond the wire. In Europe, cities burn. Here, the prisoners chase leather across a diamond. The War Department will later note in a 1945 circular that 91% of U.S. camps now run organized sports programs. Baseball has become not just pastime, but policy. After the war, the echoes carry forward. Interviews conducted in the 1950s and archived in the Bundesarchiv reveal POWs recalling the games with disbelief. "We learned America not through lectures, but through baseball," one former prisoner said. Some carried the sport home. In Munich and Hamburg, clubs emerged, seeded by men who first swung bats in captivity. What had been designed as a control measure became unexpectedly cultural transfer. The statistics sharpen the outline. Of the 371,683 German POWs held in the United States, official records show only 2,222 escape attempts, a fraction compared to the chaos in European camps. Each failure or success can be measured in percentages, but behind the numbers lies the geometry of order. The camps functioned because men played, and men played because they were allowed to forget for a moment that they were prisoners. In the end, the program worked like any engine, requiring fuel, maintenance, and constant oversight. But its power lay not in steel or powder. It lay in rules, chalk lines, and the sound of ash wood striking a stitched ball. In that rhythm, The United States discovered that a camp could be stabilized not only by rifles and barbed wire, but by innings, outs, and scoreboards. The thesis is simple and sharp. America turned captivity into a game, and the game became a machine of control.